Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Red Room. Tonight is one of my series in creating the goals, the building blocks of a healthy lifestyle. So tonight, out of the six different levels of your planning, this is part 4, where we talk about your heart, your emotional intelligence, your enthusiasm, your happiness, your enjoyment of the things that you care about, and your relationships. And before we launch into that, I just wanted to ask you if you have any questions about last week's module, the one where you're looking at your own identity, who you are. And so last week, if we look at the big picture from your handouts, this is the number 7, 8, and 9. The positive sense of self, number 7. Number 8, your learning, your knowledge, your skills, your abilities, the things that you develop inside yourself. And then number 9, how you express those things as a good role model, as a person who is comfortable with themselves and has a sense of who they are in the world, and how you end up using that to become a teacher or a leader, or in some way assisting people with the sense of your persona, your identity, who you are. So that's what we looked at last week. And I just wanted to make sure that you're okay with what we looked at, and that you were able to set goals for yourself in those 3 areas of your lifestyle. Because now, tonight, we're going into numbers 10, 11, and 12 of the 18 blocks. Tonight is this one here. It's the heart. And I find that in my world of teaching and mentoring, so much of what people bring to me are troubles with their emotional intelligence, or how they handle themselves, or how they know themselves emotionally, and how that shows up in their relationships. Of course, this is not disparate from all the other aspects of who you are, because it's all integrated. But our emotional intelligence is the sense of caring and connectedness we have with what we value in ourselves, in the world, and in our relationships, and how we communicate how much we care, how we communicate how displeased we are, or what scares us, what it is that we don't like, that perhaps disgusts us, or angers us, frustrates us. We need to be able to connect with those feelings, know what they are, because they're always a sign of something that we care about, which is a call to action in some way or another, whether it's to express the things that you're grateful for or that you love, and to express also in appropriate and constructive ways the things that you don't like and would like to change. So that's an entire seminar right there in understanding the levels of emotional intelligence and how they work in us and in our relationships. But for today, I want us just look at the goals that you want to set for yourself. If you want to go more deeply into this, of course, contact me. I have quite a lengthy study guide, and I do teach it in the corporate world. And what I use to measure it when I'm teaching just emotional intelligence is the EQ map. And you can research that online. You can actually even take the inventory on the internet. So, I'm the EQ map, which is the map of your emotional intelligence. And FYI, it measures emotional intelligence on 20 scales, 20 different aspects of how we experience and express our connection with our emotions or our feelings. So it's quite an art form, and takes an entire life of learning how to express and be graceful with what we care about and get a success in terms of what we want both inside ourselves, in our lives, and in our relationships. So let's look tonight at these 3 building blocks. And if you like, I hope you downloaded and printed your handout. Your handout for tonight has spaces for you to jot in some goals so that you know what you're shooting for. I recently read an article about one of my colleagues who teaches goal setting, and it was interesting that she said that when she's teaching a seminar, if she asks for a show of hands, how many people have written their goals down? Perhaps 3 or 4 people out of 50 will agree that they have written their goals. And I was quite surprised by that, because those of us who have been interested in achievement and success and personality, good, healthy lifestyle, we know about writing down our goals, and we have done for at least, 10 to 15 years. And so I want you to be very aware that writing down your goals, or in some way or another expressing the things that you care about and the goals that you want in your life. I just want to show you something. 20 years ago, I began to set goals. I just started grad school in psychology when I was 40. And in essence, in order to go to grad school, I turned a real corner where I was no longer working in the fields that I'd been working, and therefore lost that building income and that building direction in that part of my talents and my career and my abilities to turn the corner, which means I was starting over again. And so I didn't have very much leeway financially. I was making it, but all the wonderful things that I wanted in life, mostly all that was there was work and studies. So part of me was a little depressed by that, and I decided, well, use your own talents. So little by little, I collected the visual images, the pictures that were meaningful to me. And I started it then, and it took me a couple of years to complete this particular object. And it's one of those, it's a Mastermind Goal Achievers journal from 1990. And I divided it into 12 different sections. And part of this book was about setting goals, but you can see my 12 different sections. And each of those sections is a part of my life, was a part of my life. And then I started to collect photographs or pictures from magazines or words and glue them in here in those areas. So I'll just show you, where is the one? I put in a picture of what I really wanted my office to look like. And let's see if I can find the one that I'm thinking of. Yes, here we go. There's the picture. I wanted to be an author, and I wanted to have my office look like that. But if you see, this book is full of pictures and words and ideas that were my ideal. I revisited it carefully. I've looked at it over the years, but I revisited it recently, realizing that it had been 20 years since I started setting those goals. And I realized that only one section remains of that book where my goals have not been realized. So 90% of the goals that I set for myself in some way or another, have come true. I like to think that if I don't set my goals, if I don't ask for what I want, if I don't have a purpose in mind for my energies, my studies, my work, then somebody else's is going to determine who I become and what my life looks like. So it's really important that we set these goals, and that's one of the reasons why I've created this system of 18 building blocks, to make sure you don't miss any. Now, this presupposes that you understand that we're not going to just automatically reach all those goals instantly, or in a month or a year or even 5 years. Or for me, it took me pretty much 20 years to get to the excellence that I wanted in those areas of my goals. And I did have them written down in words in another place as well. So I'd like you to write down your goals today. It doesn't have to be the perfect way that you want to write it down. Just write something down, because as you begin, you'll grow and be able to articulate them even better as time goes on. So for tonight, I'd like you to write down 3 goals, one, at least one in each of these columns, 10, 11, and 12. So let's look at number 10. This is the internal part of your emotional nature. So this is emotional intelligence, being cheerful, caring, empathetic, can grieve for catharsis' sake, which means you need to be able to release your feelings. When you're full of feelings, they need to be released or vented in some kind of catharsis, and we want you to do that in the most mature and healthy way, and be able to let go of your feelings. Manage your feelings rather than just have them expressed willy-nilly. Manage your stress. Be able to be intimate as well as private, to have emotional peace, and to have the ability of forgiving others and yourself, of course. So these are internal abilities that we create to be sensitive to our own feelings and what they mean to us in the world. So type a question anytime you like. Otherwise, I'm going to go into a little more depth with this. So first of all, somebody who is emotionally intelligent is happy. They're cheerful. Not all of the time, of course, because that would be la la land, right? But when we have emotional intelligence, we have an enthusiasm about life. We appreciate and are in the midst of things about life that we care about. And so emotional intelligence comes under that one heading, caring. And in the professional sense, the public or formal sense, respectful. And in the intimate sense, adoring. And in the broad and general sense, we love things. We care about them so much, we love them. You know, like tonight, I saw a sunset down my street with the beautiful pink and blue clouds through the silhouettes of the black trees. I love that feast for my eyes. I watched it, I enjoyed it, and shared it with someone. If we're emotionally intelligent, we have that delight about the things we care about in life. And of course, then we have intolerance for the things that we find are not healthy, that should not be tolerated, and that need to be changed or improved. Then, if you think of that in the broadest sense and in the most foundational sense, our feelings are our motivators. So if I need to help somebody motivate themselves to do something, it's pretty hard to be motivated, for most of us that is, just intellectually. Some people are motivated by ideas. They're thrilled to learn some new thing. Those are the true thinkers. Some people are very motivated by doing something which gets them something in return, whether it's love or money or freedom or peace or time off. But most of this is all connected in some way or another with the heart, some way or another with what we're enthusiastic about, what we care about, what we love. And so when we find a need for motivation to get something done, the fastest way to make that happen is to remember what you really care about and then slot that in. So for example, if I know that I need to get a piece of writing done, and writing for me oftentimes is difficult, it doesn't come just easily. If I need to get that piece of writing done, I will think about someone or a couple whom I care about. And then I will do that writing because I really care that they learn this or have access to this or have a tool to make their lives better. Empathy is the personal part of that, where we're empathetic towards other people. Well, we can care about nature and the environment, but empathy is that caring sense about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, wanting to care for and respect other people in lots of different ways. So the warmth of the heart is usually awakened through whatever it is we feel about people or about our quality of life. So then the motivator for being empathetic is that we care. Some of us have learned to be pretty protective of ourselves, and we connect with what we need, what we want to protect ourselves because we're anxious or nervous about things, want to feel as if we're worthy, and so we want to get praise and appreciation, want to feel as if we're free and capable of being able to get what we need. And so that sense of freedom that comes with the enthusiasm in all of these ways. So if you're emotionally intelligent and you have that part developed in you, you're connected with your enthusiasm. And generally, you have a cheerfulness in you. And if you don't have these things, then something is missing, dear. Something is not there that you need. And I would want you to set a goal to find a way to bring something into your life that creates good cheer in your heart, in your feelings, in your sense of what you do in your life and how you are in your relationships. So if you don't have that good cheer and that enthusiasm, something is missing. And I want you to think about what it is that you need to write down as your goal so that you have that sense of cheerfulness, of empathy for yourself and for others. I think that underneath all of the difficulties in life, all of the lessons, all of the challenges, all of the work that we need to do, underneath that, we are buffeted. We are in certain ways stressed, pushed. And most of the time we respond to that need and that call in constructive ways. And sometimes it takes too much of us. Sometimes we lose something that's precious. Sometimes we leave behind something that was important to us then in order to go to something better. But there's a bump in the road there, in that change, in that transformation. And that's when we feel sadness. And that's when we need to be able to understand the change process where we release things and go towards the next one. And in doing that, we feel the sadness of certain kinds of grief perhaps a small grief, in terms of, gee, I'm going to miss this car, and oh boy, I'll get my dream car now. Or a big sadness if you lose a job or someone you love. We need to be able to be with that, to be present with that. It's a way, a kind of honoring of that which we had, that we cared about, and then letting it go. And the honoring is natural grief. So this part of emotional intelligence, for catharsis, can you grieve for catharsis and can you let go, is something that is seldom taught and is a topic of my work in my private practice over and over and consistently. Which means we really don't understand change, loss, letting go, getting catharsis, venting healthily, and grieving. So we need to be able to cry. Bottom line, when we feel any emotion intensely, and there are 5 categories of feelings, we need to cry because it moves us so deeply, whether it's positive or negative. So let me say that these 5 categories of emotion, of course, there's joy. Of course, there's awe or wonder. And there's fear or anxiety, nervousness, terror, different elements of fear. There's shame, or I'm typing here. Shame or self-doubt, feeling like we're not adequate. There's disgust. When we encounter something that is heinous or evil, and we have this sense of disgust with it. And of course, then there's another emotional response that doesn't kind of feel like an emotional response in a certain way, but it's surprise, where it's like, oh, something surprised me and quickened me emotionally. Did you notice that on that list there's no anger? Because in my way of thinking about anger, it's not a feeling, it's a response to some threat. And that means a response by the protector in us. So anger is not a feeling, it's that rushing up of power that says I need to take action to protect myself or defend somebody else that's in trouble. Now, what we need to know is that of these 5 categories of feelings, if we're not acknowledging, not sensing in our organism, in our being, that there's something buffeting us, something, and very often the areas that we really need to pay attention are with the fear and anxiety, of course, with the shame or self-doubt, and then with disgust. We need to take care of those. And I knew there was something missing that I needed to talk. Your pain or sadness. So we need to take care of those by paying attention to how that experience is inside of us, because it's a signal that we need to tend to something. And if it's sadness, that means we need to grieve. We need to cry and acknowledge what we lost so that we can let it go. If it's fear, we're crying because we're scared. And we need to process that through, because one of the quotes I just love is, fear is the mind killer. And if we're in too much fear, then we're not able to think clearly or solve the problem of whatever it is that's scaring us. And then, of course, shame and self-doubt. If we feel terrible depression or low self-esteem, we're going to cry there as well. So we all need to be able to comfortably get catharsis. Oftentimes we need that for ourselves, by ourselves, unless we really need to cry on somebody's shoulder, not like a victim, but just for support. And that means somehow or another giving yourself permission to cry and let it go. And you know, sometimes it's just as simple as when you go to a sad movie, you cry along with the person who is in trouble. And it quickens your own catharsis, your own release. And I don't know about you, but it's pretty common for me. If I'm holding on to something and I haven't noticed that I needed to let it go, and I'm at a movie or an opera or symphony or something, and it's deeply moving, the sadness will come up and I'll remember what I'm sad about, or I'll remember what I'm worried about. And that's then the way of letting it go because I'm crying and noticing, there's something I need to tend to. So that's a kind of a description of how we handle our emotions privately, personally. If you can't cry and get catharsis, partly you're not sure of what's going on inside yourself, and partly you're holding on to something and therefore not able to let go and move on to the next thing in your life, which means not able to grow. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to type to me. So let's see what our time is like. Oh, good. So as you can tell, I have a lot of thoughts, and there are many important things about emotional intelligence and how we experience and express our feelings that are motivators, that are ways that we find empathy and forgiveness, and also ways that we experience that love, that cheerfulness, that gratitude, that delight in the joys of the world. Because you may know this or not, if we refuse our anger, if we refuse our resentment, if we refuse our sadness, if we refuse our guilt, if we refuse our anxiety, it stays there and it's kind of shut down, and we also then refuse our joy. Because all of the emotions are carried in the same place. Actually, it's in the midbrain, what we call the mammalian brain. And if you walk into that area and open, in essence, open your heart, open yourself to your heart, you're going to experience all of the feelings that are in there. So that means if you close the door to your heart, you're going to close the door not only to the difficult things, but to the joyful things. Have you ever noticed that? People who are kind of tight, emotionally shut down, they don't, we call it flat. They don't experience their anguish, and they don't experience their enthusiasm and their joy. So I would like you to set a goal for yourself about what you want to do about connecting with being emotionally sensitive and robust. I mean, not feeling like you're out of control, but being in connection with what it is that you care about. So well put. Thank you very much. So set a goal for yourself. If it's hard for you, ask me a question, and I'll have some ideas. I'm also going to go through a list of prompts, ideas that may help you in terms of articulating the goals for your emotional intelligence and how you are in your relationships. So any questions, please type to me. And thanks so much for tuning in. Okay, are we ready to go from the internal into the being of it, which means my purpose is for me to express my feelings artfully and intelligently. And one of the things that, in the large picture of things, I remind us that we are not our feelings. Our feelings really are a response to who we are and what we think. That we only experience a feeling when we're aware of something intelligently or experientially, whether it's in your soul, in your mind, or your perceptions. That's when we have an emotional response. The emotions aren't the beginning, they are I think of it as the scent, savor, color, and texture of your experience, of your identity, of what you care about. So remember when people say, well, I'm going to have my feelings when I want, and my feelings are really important. Well, yes, they are, but they can easily be irrational because we can have irrational thoughts. And so sometimes I'll tell somebody, I really don't respect your feelings because those feelings aren't healthy. They aren't in touch with reality because the thought process underneath them is unhealthy or irrational or inappropriate. So there's an old school that wants to, let me hear your feelings about this. Well, yes, I want to hear that because they are in some way my signpost to get to what's the truth in you. It isn't the feeling I'm really going to put number one. It's what's the truth that caused the feeling. And sometimes people get caught in just the washing and the tantrum of a feeling, and they think that they have a right to that and that they deserve that, and unless it's appropriate, unless it's healthy, now I'm not going to respect that kind of expression, that kind of what we call drama. Those are tantrums that are usually inappropriate. And of course, I've talked specifically about emotional intelligence and the 5 tantrums in a previous edition of the Red Room. So if you want more information about that, just email me and ask me, and we'll make sure you get my handouts on the 5 ways people throw temper tantrums and the 5 ways that we want to handle our feelings appropriately. So let's see, do tantrums or venting ever have a place? Yes, and for yourself, by yourself. So tantrums are just blowing out your feelings, yelling, screaming, or refusing to talk. They're always manipulative. They're always trying to express something, and if you're doing it in the presence of somebody else, you're trying to force them to do something. And I don't know about you, but if somebody kind of points a finger at me and says, you're going to do this my way, inside I'm saying, well, I respect you, and if you don't respect me, I'm certainly not going to be pushed around by you. Now, I'm going to be a lady on the outside, but tantrums and venting are only from people who are emotionally immature. Now, if you've been horribly dishonored or violated, you need to vent. You need to, in essence, have a kind of a tantrum. And the mature way of doing that is alone, by yourself, which means I've made myself hoarse several times in my life, screaming in the car, where I was just so enraged and outraged by something that I was just livid. And I had to let it out. I mean, I know my profession. So I was screaming, pardon me, but every cuss word I knew, and I felt like my vocabulary was sorely lacking in the cuss words that I needed, and that I expressed all of that rage and all of that outrage, all of that pain and betrayal, but by myself. nobody is served well by being on the receiving end of that. Even when you're feeling like you have a right to some revenge, revenge never works. That payback, that, well, it's fair, he hurt me, I can hurt him, that's kind of what adults need to moderate when kids are about 6 or 7 years old. No, we don't hit back. No, we don't get revenge. That's entering into that place of being mean and cruel yourself. So tantrums have a place when you need to just explode about something that's outrageous and an outrage. I love the example of what my husband does. He hasn't done it since we've been married, but earlier in his life he did. He would collect burned out light bulbs. And when he had just had it up to here and he needed to just throw a fit, he would go put the trash can down on its side in the alley and take those burned out light bulbs and heave them in the trash can. Heaving a light bulb in a trash can causes an explosion, which is very dramatic, very loud. He wasn't hurting anybody, and he was expressing the explosiveness of his outrage so that he could, in essence, get it out. That's what we need to do. We need to vent it and get catharsis. Get it out so that then you can become intelligent and look at the problem and figure out intelligently and wisely what is the best course of action for a solution. So does that answer your question? If you think about it, has it ever been appropriate for somebody to throw a tantrum in your presence? It's not constructive. It's not respectful. And if it gets a result, the result is only from a negative response, not a positive or constructive response. So another example, when I was profoundly betrayed many years ago, really truly violated and abused. You know, we've all been through the dark night of the soul, right? And I was working with a therapist, and he taught me how to do the temper tantrum, which I did by myself on the bed, which has to do with cross pattern hitting and kicking on the bed. So I would do that and scream and yell until I got to the place of crying, and then just let go the agony of the betrayal and violation that had been visited upon me. I also swam laps in a big pool. And every time my face hit the water and I was blowing out, I was screaming. Every time my arm came over in the crawl for the next stroke, I was hitting the water with my outrage. So what we need to do is use the large muscle groups and express that, get the catharsis and the feeling of how powerful our outrage is, and not hurt anyone nor insult anyone with that expression. Does that make sense? Are those good examples for you? Do you think there's a value in expressing one's hurts to a trusted loved one? Of course. And that's how emotional intelligence comes into a relationship. We do, and that's when that falls under that category of what I said earlier of needing support. In essence, crying on somebody's shoulder. Somebody where we're not trying to make them do anything or pay them back or get some kind of a result. We're just needing to grieve, and that it feels so loving to have someone present or with their arm around us or holding us or comforting us as we grieve our own sadness. So yes, absolutely. And goodness knows, if we don't do that for our children, when they're hurt or angry or scared or ashamed, if we don't hold them and let them cry, They don't know what it's like to have catharsis and to cry, because they're crying. They're not crying to get back at us. They're crying because they're healthily connected with needing to let go of how badly they feel. We're in our most vulnerable state in those times, and I think it's nice to share that with a friend. I couldn't say it better. Absolutely. Okay, I see the distinction you're making between vengeful and manipulative venting versus showing our soft sides. Yes, because the way you said showing our soft sides, in essence, that's being completely honest. And usually our soft side is where we're completely sincere and honest. We're vulnerable. We're not holding anybody away. We're not putting on any masks. We're not trying to make somebody do something. We've just relaxed and come to our honesty, our sincerity. And if you're a good person, and 99% of us are good people, when we come to that sincerity and that honesty, we care. And then the caring is the sadness. Sometimes it's the fear and anxiety. And in that time, we don't want to be alone. Emotionally intelligent people have intimates. They have a beloved, and they have close friends. Not a lot, because you can't be close to many people, but one or two people whom you're close with that you can confide in and relax and just be sincere and honest. And I don't know about you, but when that happens with me and my beloved, or with one of my family members, or with a dear friend, I feel so honored to hold that space for them. And as a therapist, I do the same thing, to be gentle and kind and understanding when someone is in agony. And I don't like that people are alone in their agony. When we're grieving, when we're really sad, it's better that we have someone there to comfort us. Or if you don't have someone that you're safe with, then kind of like my rule of thumb, because a woman generally needs to cry and kind of work through her feelings every month. That 28th day, she's quickened to let go in catharsis of whatever it is that's been buffeting her that month. My kind of rule of thumb with that is I want you to be in your rocking chair with your journal book. Because sometimes, yes, you need to tell a friend, but sometimes you need it to be between you and your own soul. And because it's private and it's not anybody else's business. And so then you have your book, and you write down, as the tears drop, the words drop, because you're listening and honoring what concerns you, what hurt you, what thrilled you, whatever it was that happened that month. So thank you for mirroring that for me. Yes, you're understanding what I'm trying to convey beautifully. So let's look at number 11, and this is the how we express in the middle here. How we express ourselves. Happy, optimistic. Under stress, we're optimistic. We're emotionally sensitive to ourselves and to other people. We're able to create boundaries, which means we can say no gracefully. And we can create boundaries within ourselves gracefully. Like I expressed earlier, I needed to get catharsis of my outrage, and I set boundaries with myself where I wanted to do that. And if I was sad and I didn't have a friend nearby, and it was that time of the month, I set boundaries for myself and expressed it with my journal book in my quiet place with an Afghan, Manage and soothe your own anxiety. And if you don't know how to soothe anxiety, I want you to have a list of 10 to 30 things of what to do that helps you with your anxiety, and especially anxiety when you need to be sleeping at night. And I've talked about that in a previous Red Room as well. And how you handle your defensiveness and your anger. Now, we don't want to be defensive, because that says we have put ourselves in a place of being a victim. And most of the time, we really aren't a victim. There's always something that we can do. And our anger, of course. And I think I've gone over that pretty well. Is this make sense? Is this coming together for you? Because that's number 11. The next one will be number 12, which is in our intimate relationship. And look, we've got another comment here. That 28th day, I'm an older guy dating a younger girl. Have forgotten what happens during that time. How do I diplomatically say in a loving way, you're on the rag, bitch? Well, you definitely don't want to ever use those terms. That's truly an insult. And I remember that my husband, my first husband, when I was in my 20s, was very disrespectful to me. And he would just tell me that I had to be hormonal and that I should go in the bedroom, shut the door, and, you know, when I could be appropriate, I could come out. Kind of like his treating me like a child and putting me in timeout. No empathy and no understanding of feelings. And that's one of the reasons why I learned so much from that first marriage. It was very difficult for me. I learned a lot. In a loving way, what you want to say is you want to mirror her feelings. Just like we mirror a child's feelings. When a child is upset, you want to say, I can tell you're upset. Do you want to tell me about it? What's going on? Are you sad? Are you scared about something? And if it's not anger, it's going to have an intelligent message for us. Anger usually isn't intelligence, it's just energy that needs to be expressed somewhere. And my favorite constructive way of expressing my anger in that marriage, actually, was I would remove all of the Venetian blinds and I would wash them one at a time. I had that much energy that I needed to express. And I had pretty darn good boundaries with my anger, and that's what I did with it. I cleaned. It was about the only freedom that I had. And I took it and I used it. So that time, that 28th day, for a woman is sacred. And I need to teach this so often with our women. They call it the curse or something that their mothers have told them that's very negative. It's a way of guaranteeing that a woman is emotionally balanced and refreshed every month. And I believe that the big part of that is if you have children that you're responsible for, you need to be emotionally balanced yourself in order to be properly wise and empathetic and caring for children. Because you can't afford to be grieving your own grief. You're just in touch with your feelings. You're not taking care of your responsibilities. So a woman in a certain way with good boundaries is going to hold on to her feelings because it's not appropriate to just boo-hoo wherever, whenever. So that once a month, she needs to go into her private space, or she needs to talk to a loved one who is willing to hear and this is what a woman needs, validate all the things that are on her heart. Let's see here. It's been a long time since I have dated a menstruating woman. Thanks for your input. You're so welcome. Thank you for asking. So she needs to be validated with what's on her heart. And that means it's a time to sit down with a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, and snuggle, hold her, put an Afghan over her, and if she wants to tell you, she will. If you make it safe for her, or just hold her while she sobs, she will be at your feet for being so strong and kind. A woman in that place needs sincerity and kindness. She needs sincerity and kindness from others around her, And more importantly, she needs sincerity and kindness with herself. And that's why I say, I think about it as in the rocking chair or in the recliner with an Afghan and a cup of tea and your journal book, so that you listen and are sincere with what's filling your heart. Okay, thanks. Good. You got it. Which means you're gonna have a lady who feels very loved. And then the third column, of course, is about mission and service. So that means, how do you express your feelings to make a difference in the world? And this is about our passions. What are you passionate about? And how do you take that passion into the world? Of course, in your intimate relationship, with your friendships, with acts of kindness, with how you're in dialogue with people, when you're emotionally sensitive to others, able to solve conflicts with courtesy, just exactly like what this gentleman just asked. That is his way of being sensitive to his beloved. And that's what a great man, a kind man, a good man does. And it's what a woman does for her man too. Although our men oftentimes need to get themselves catharsis and a release by themselves. They really need to go in their cave and do that alone. And women need to understand that yes, they do cry, but oftentimes they need to do it in their cave where it's safe and quiet and private. So let me just whip through this list of just general suggestions. Now this list here is in my Lifestyle Design Guide, which I mentioned last time. This is the men's copy, and this is the women's copy. So there's a little more information on helping you set your goals. Somebody that's not listening, right? So pictures for your relationships and your intimacy and the way you want to express your passions in your heart. If you need a better social life, go where people with your interests can be found. Friendships, colleagues, neighbors, renters, you want to have good relationships with them. Surprise your beloved with memorable romantic gestures, moments, and adventures. Study romance, 1001 Ways of Being Romantic with Gregory Godek. I have mentioned him to you before when I'm talking about relationships and marriage, but he's the one who teaches and writes practical, step-by-step recipes for being romantic, which means expressing the passion in your heart. Research and create high-quality family activities for your happy relationships, cheerfulness, and fun. Travel together. Travel with your beloved, with your friends, with other couples, with your kids, with other families. Research and create high-quality activities between you and your beloved. Mentor your children through school, through their lessons, through projects, through clubs. This is one way of expressing your emotional intelligence and your passion, is being there with your kids in high-quality places. Stay tied to all of your generations. Nurture your siblings, your children, your grandchildren, your aunts, your uncles. Get and care for a pet, a horse, a fish, something. Learn to converse with your spouse or co-workers or supervisors. It's the language of communication, which is an art form, and I teach it at multiple levels. If you need to know communication, I've got some things that work. Learn and master listening and conflict resolution, how you handle your feelings without venting or tantrums. Assist in La Leche League or with new mothers or with the elderly. Learn and teach parenting, positive discipline. That's urgently needed by our people at every age, whether it's a middle schooler or a grandparent. They need to know now what we know about empowering our kids healthily and happily. We don't need negative discipline, ever. We don't ever need to be mean. There's never an excuse for that. People don't know how to not do it, though, do they? Learn or teach marriage enrichment, mentor other couples, find the right intimate relationship. If you're stuck, see a counselor to open up for love. Most of us, those of us who are really healthy, we want an intimate relationship. We want a beloved, a twin soul. And if you want one, I guarantee you, as a marriage counselor and as a person who works with people all the time, I guarantee you, if you want to love somebody, that somebody exists. Create and hold a treasure hunt for your family or for local groups. So see, this is a way, these are ways for you to express your passions, express your heart. And if you want my passion list, as I've mentioned before, it's 8 pages long to help kind of just spark your memory and saying, oh, wait a minute, that is something that I care about. I need to be in that. The number one thing to getting energy, dears, is doing something, first of all, fun. Don't get your work done and then play. You've got to have some play in there because the work is never done, is it? I learned that one the hard way. Any more questions, dears, before we close today? Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your questions and your comments. It's thrilling to me to hear that people are spending the time listening to my broadcast, using it, making a difference in their lives, and want to really know how to do things better. I think it's there in all of us. Thank you, those of you who tuned in tonight, for taking the time, making it a priority in your day, in your life, to choose the goals for what it is that you want more and better of in your heart, inside, in the way you handle yourself emotionally, and in how you express your passions in your marriage, your family, your community, your workplace. Our hearts are the places where the best motivation comes from and the greatest passion in life, and therefore our ability to be cheerful. The highest degree of emotional intelligence. Cheerfulness, unstoppable cheerfulness, enthusiasm for ourselves and our lives. Thank you so much, dears, for tuning in tonight. And I will see you next week in the Red Room. And let me tell you what I'm going to do. Next week is week 5 of 6 in helping you create these building blocks for a healthy lifestyle. Week 5 of 6 is your personal power. It's your ability to plan, motivate yourself, and achieve. Those are the internal abilities. Then how you express this with your knowledge, the goals you set, the good habits that you have, the self-discipline that you've cultivated. And then number 3, how you give it to the world. And that's your mission for your works, your career, your achievements, the success that you create in your life. So it's not uncommon that people set goals about these things. And yet, I'm coming from a place of this is your personal power. This is how you wield your energy, your mind, your time, and focus it on achieving what it is that you really want. So, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Good night for tonight. Tonight was week 4 of 6 with emotional intelligence and relationships in the heart. Next week, week 5 of 6 with your personal power. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and good night. Thank you, honey.